Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at the final of this newest line of battle damage figures from Mattel that has just recently hit stores in Canada. Well, I don't know if it's recent, actually. They've been out for probably a month or two now, maybe even longer. But they are totally non-existent here in the United States, so just like the last two reviews, I do want to state that I was able to get these thanks to Kevin McDonald, a faithful viewer of my channel from Canada, who was kind enough to help me acquire these and ship them to me and all that fun stuff. So a huge thank you once again goes out to him, because without him getting these for us here to review on the channel, we would not have had a chance to take a look at them, and I would not have been able to add them to my collection. So thank you once again to him. But as far as the packaging goes, it's your typical battle damage packaging. The back shows an image of the Proceratosaurus right there, and then an image of the Herrerasaurus and the battle damage Gallimimus. So I'm excited to take a look at this one. I really quite can't wait, because I love their Proceratosaurus and now a battle damage version. I think this is the first time we've had a battle damage version of this figure, so I'm really excited. Let's break this open right now and take a look at it. So here is, he's on his face, is our new Proceratosaurus, and I am really excited about this figure. I think it looks fantastic, honestly. Really nicely sculpted, really nicely painted. This paint job is actually quite beautiful. Definitely way better than I expected it to be. A lot more striking. It's all very darkish type of a colors, but the way that it kind of stripes up here onto the head and through the eyes just looks incredibly well done, and is quite different than most of what Mattel has offered up previously. So I'm definitely a huge fan of this paint job. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get a closer look at this right now. So as far as the sculpt of this figure goes, we have actually reviewed this, just like the last three battle damage figures I've reviewed. We have reviewed the sculpt before. We really only need to look at what's new when it comes to this figure, not what we've already seen before. So as far as the coloration goes, you can see that the coloration primarily is this very dark, like purplish color for the main part of the head, and that same color kind of runs up onto the top of the head and then down the neck into the back. And I think that the overall appearance and design of the paint scheme is really quite different than a lot of the Mattel figures we've seen in the past. So it's really quite a breath of fresh air, similar to the Monolophosaurus when it comes to the paint scheme of this. I think that it's very nice, very different, and it's a lot nicer to see something like this, a lot more refreshing. And you can see that it's the same type of a look on this side. You also have this kind of a brownish color, almost like an orangish brown or a raw sienna type color that runs up onto the head here from the back, and you can see it kind of stripes the body for the most part, and it runs up onto the head and then around, kind of rims the eyebrow area and then down over into the palate. And I think that also looks really cool. So as far as paint application, you actually have a significant amount in this Proceratosaurus, more so than what you normally get, because you've got this dark purplish color, then you've got this kind of raw sienna type color that runs all over the body. It's like an orangish brown, and then you've got this brown type here that is like the primary body color, and then you've also got a light underbelly. So there is a significant amount of color variation throughout this figure. And then you've of course got the white up here on the snout of the figure, and you can see that that does look really nice. Again, it's beautifully sculpted, but we don't really have to talk about that. But as far as the white coloration on it, it definitely looks really well done, and is kind of a bit of flashiness to the body. In an otherwise very dark color scheme, you get this little bit of a light coloration up here on the snout, and I think it was a very nice touch on the part of Mattel. You've got yellow eyes, like usual when it comes to these figures, but look at how beautifully glossed it is, really nicely shining and glistening in the light, and it is perfectly placed. Same deal with this side, I think, yep. I mean, this one looks a little bit sloppy, it's down just a hair too far, but not even remotely enough to complain about. We've of course got the articulated jaw like usual, and the teeth appear to be painted really quite well, just like the last few. That's actually really nice to see. There's not really any sloppiness. I've had numerous times where I've had kind of the paint run up here onto the jaw and stuff, and I haven't really been seeing much of that on these battle damage figures, and you can see that really nicely on this Proceratosaurus. Beautifully painted tongue in there. It appears to be sculpted quite well. Nicely glossed, so see how nice that gloss is there on the corner of the skin flap there in the mouth, but the Proceratosaurus's mouth doesn't really open quite as far as others like the Monolophosaurus and Herrerasaurus, so you can't get in there too far to really see. The upper side of the inside of the mouth also sports no coloration as far as this pink color, similar to the others as well. And then as you run down the body, you can see that this kind of orange-brown type color stripes through all the way back here actually onto the tail. So it is really, really awesome that we see color variation on the tail, because it's few and far between that we get something like that with Mattel, but it's extremely few and far between when we get it on a figure like a Battle Damage figure or an Attack Pack figure like this size range. You just don't really see it very often, so I am incredibly excited to see that here on this figure. As far as color variation, again, I said you've got the light underbelly, starts here in the chest region and ends right before the tail. So other than that, it doesn't really look like there's anything else going on. When it comes to the paint, I'm not really seeing that speckling that we see more often than not on a lot of the Mattel figures. That's also not on this one either. But we've got the Jurassic Facts app code here on the underside if you are in fact interested in adding this to your collection. But otherwise, this is an incredibly nice looking Proceratosaurus figure. As far as articulation goes on this Proceratosaurus, there's actually a little bit more than the previous versions. So you've got the articulated jaw, which works beautifully, but you also have articulation here in the neck on a swivel, and this is something that the other Proceratosaurus figures did not have prior to this. So it's awesome now to have some posability when it comes to the neck region, and it really gives you a lot more difference when it comes to display. I absolutely love articulation in the neck, and the articulation in the neck of this one works really, really smoothly. Everywhere I put it, it absolutely looks perfect. So I really love the articulation in the neck of this one. You've also got articulation in the arms, just like the others. You can put the arms out to fly, and then you've got articulation in the legs right there, and a swiveled tail, and then of course the battle damage wound there that you can see is really nicely painted with that same reddish coloration that all the others always have. It's really cool looking, very nice and gory appearance to your, I guess, then either injured or deceased dinosaur, and the battle damage works perfect. This is something that I don't believe we had prior to this release when it comes to a Proceratosaurus, so that's really cool to see on this figure. Nice to have alternate versions and not just repaints, and to show you the differences actually between this one and the prior release. You can really see now the differences between the two, because they've actually taken the legs and mirrored the legs. If I actually turn them the same way, you'll see now that this version's right leg is in the back and its left leg is ahead. That's the opposite of what the previous releases were. So they've mirrored the legs to give it even more difference when it comes to, of course, having the battle damage wound, an alternate paint scheme, and now articulation in the neck. So as far as the Proceratosaurus figure goes, this newer battle damage version is definitely the ultimate out of all of those. I was a big fan of this figure, and I really do still quite like it. Actually, I've liked all of the versions of the Proceratosaurus so far, but I think that this one is my favorite now, just because I really am a huge fan of the paint scheme, and the articulation in the neck is awesome. As far as a size goes, from the tail to the head, you're looking at about 6 inches, or about 15, maybe a little bit over 15 centimeters, and for a height, about 3¼ inches, or about 8.5 centimeters, somewhere in that range. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, and next to him, you can really tell that this Proceratosaurus is a small figure, and I usually say that they're all around the same size range, but I think the Proceratosaurus is actually just a little bit smaller than most of the other battle damage figures and attack packs. It's really quite the small figure, and next to the Papo Rex, you should have a pretty good idea of that. And if you don't, then here next to the Monolophosaurus, you can definitely now tell that the Proceratosaurus is a bit smaller. If we put them around the same spot as far as their legs go, you can really see that there is a good bit of difference in size. So this shows you that the Proceratosaurus is probably the smallest of the attack pack figures so far, and definitely the smallest, I think, of the battle damage figures. So this new Proceratosaurus from Mattel for the Jurassic World Battle Damage line is awesome. I really love this one. This is easily, like I said, my favorite out of all of the Proceratosaurus figures. So these newer Battle Damage figures actually are really cool at replacing my older ones as far as my favorites, because the Monolophosaurus, which I had just shown you guys, is definitely my favorite of the Monolophosaurus figures as well. So 2 out of 3 when it comes to replacing the others and stepping up as far as my favorites is not bad at all. But this one specifically is really well done. I think that the paint scheme on this looks so cool just because it's not the typical light color as opposed to a darker color that you more often see on a Mattel figure, and you also don't have that kind of splotchiness just kind of all over the place, and then the lighter color as the underbelly and everything. You see a more darker coloration on this as far as both colorations. You've got like that dark reddish brown, which is the primary body color, and then you've got that purplish color for the other part of the body, the upper part and the head area, and then you've got that like light kind of orangish brown raw sienna type color that stripes down the side of the dinosaur and stripes along the head. So it's a lot more of a darker type of an appearance when it comes to the paint, and the design overall is definitely a good bit different in comparison to most of the other Mattel figures. You don't have that splotchiness, you've got kind of a striped look. And I also like that the coloration that is on the back, that darker coloration, actually ends up being the entire coloration of the head as well. You don't see that too often either. So I think that the coloration and the design they went with when it comes to the paint apps on this one is really nice, really refreshing. Definitely a bit different than a lot of other Mattel figures, so I can always appreciate anything new when it comes to the paint apps of these figures. Of course, we now have the addition of Battle Damage on the Proceratosaurus, which we did not have previously, and that is awesome as well, because it's really fun to not just get repaints, but to actually get different versions, and a Battle Damage is definitely a nice addition to the Proceratosaurus family that is currently growing in the Mattel line. So this figure is awesome. Really happy with this one for sure. And again, just like the others, if you do want to buy this, unfortunately they're not in stores in the United States as far as I know quite yet. You can probably order one on eBay, but you're probably going to have to pay scalper prices, which is really unfortunate. Either that, or maybe contact someone in Canada that might be able to pick one up and hook you up with it, because that is always a possibility, as that's how I got mine. Or you can just kind of wait it out and hope and pray they show up in the United States at some point, because they may. It wouldn't be the first time we were held out on for a figure for a while, and then all of a sudden they just showed up in mass quantities at some point. So hopefully you guys will be able to get a hold of one, but before you go hunting for that figure, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.